of a show that is hosted by Dave Lochran and Adam Scher back on the Deeper Dive. How we doing, guy?
Doing good. Glad to be back home for like a week and a half.
All right. Well, we have about an hour and 5 minutes to power through this. We've got a whole lot of games. So let's just dive right into it. For some reason, FanDuel, I don't get it, man. I get it if it was a smaller slate, but running the two 6 p.m. games here seems unnecessary. But I guess we'll talk about them anyway. Look, I'm just going to ask you up front. And Josh and I talked about this a lot today. Chris Sale, he's getting no misses on his fastball. The velocity is way down. And then you have James Paxton, he's looked okay, not great, but he has a tough matchup with Boston. Granted, you're getting discounted price points on both of them for one reason or another. One of them, tough matchup, hasn't been great. Another one has been really struggling. His velocity's down. Fastball looks awful. And then you have Matt Boyd and Joe Musgrove. Boyd, who I've said, I very much believe in his stuff. I think he's going to be very good, but he's almost $10,000 on FanDuel. And then Joe Musgrove, nice control pitcher, also above 9K on FanDuel. So let's just talk about these pitchers first, any hitters, and then we can move on to the main slates.
Yeah, I mean, the FanDuel pricing, where obviously these games are most relevant, is really, really tough to where I don't have a lot of interest in these games anyway. Like, if you wanted to stack the Yankees against Sale, I think that would make some sense because I really think that Sale's broken and it's going to be sooner than later that he ends up on the DL. But with all the injuries to the Yankees, how appealing is that stack really? 2 through 5, you have some power, but beyond that, there's not much there. I'm not looking to go to Sale. Tough matchup for James Paxton on a slate with plenty of pitching, so I don't feel like I need to do that. And then I like Boyd quite a bit. I like Musgrove a lot, but they're both priced up on FanDuel. Like they're really appealing on DraftKings at their price points, but that's not the main slate. So you can only get so much action there. I don't really feel the need to pay $9,700 for Boyd or $9,200 for Musgrove, but I'm not looking to take hitters against them either.
That's exactly where I'm at. By the way, someone mentioned earlier this morning on the strategy show that playing Sale is basically the same thing as playing I forget who another pitcher who's been struggling,
Pivetta.
but like who was it? Pivetta?
Yeah.
Pivetta. And I just totally disagree for a couple of reasons. One, Sale's still projected to have good ownership, but two, with some of these guys, you look at them, you're like, not really necessarily sure what's wrong. We can get into what's going on with Pivetta, but nothing is glaring. With Sale, there is something that is glaringly wrong, Adam, and it's not like we're wondering, what it is. What is it? It should probably be fixed soon. This is this is something that we're looking at it, we see it, it's evident. It's just, are you willing to admit it? And it seems like a lot of people, because of that price point, are saying, no, I think it's fine. I'm not worried about one whiff on 76 four-seamers. That's not a concern. I'm not worried about 91 mile per hour velocity. Like this is this will all fix itself in time, and his price tag is too nice. I can't get there.
Yeah, I mean, if you take that comparison, like Nick Pivetta struggled because Nick Pivetta has never been and will never be as good a pitcher as Chris Sale is when he's healthy. Like Pivetta misses his spots, he gives up home runs. It happens. It's going to happen in some starts. The stuff is still there though. Chris Sale, like if you're getting to Chris Sale, it's because of his name and because of things he's done in the past.
Exactly.
It's not because of anything he's doing this year. Like he goes out there and maxes out and is hitting 94 miles an hour for like an inning or two. And then, is dropping right back to 91 miles an hour. He has nothing right now. He dealt with some arm injuries at the end of last year. I think it's really, a legitimate reason to be concerned. Whereas Pivetta, it's just, you're getting what you get from Pivetta.
We don't have a whole lot of time because a ton of games. After another start for Aaron Nola, what do you make of him?
Still haven't dug into him again after that last start.
I haven't dug deep into it either, but I think he's another one of those guys where you're paying a lot of money for him, expecting really solid results. And if it continues, you can't just be like, I'll just keep going there until. So Chris Sale, yeah, it's troublesome for sure. And then I think, like we said, just two games that you're not really targeting bats in much either. Or wait, you said you could see stacking the Yankees, right?
Yeah, especially because with it being FanDuel and like the most players you can have in a stack is 4, it makes it a little bit easier just to get, some combination of like Judge, Voit, Torres, Frazier, and LeMahieu in there.
All right. Well, those are the two games on the early slate. We can we can move on here and tackle this. It's 5 on the dot. I think we'll be fine. Philadelphia, New York Mets, Nick Pivetta, Steven Matz. Uh, God, Gabe Kapler said about said after Nick Pivetta's last start, some things that you look at and say, "Oh, that's not what you want to hear from your starting or from your manager and your starting pitcher." He said that Pivetta didn't have the intent or conviction to put away hitters. And if you've watched him, I mean, just not hitting his spots. It's not like the velocity was an issue, but he got in 4 straight pitcher counts, either 0-2 or 1-2 counts in the first inning of last start, and gave up hits to all of them, Adam. So those are things you look at and you say, how is that happening?
Right. And it's obviously a reason to be concerned. I wrote about him in the article today. It's, I think, a really boom or bust spot for him here because he hasn't looked good. He has been missing his spots. He hasn't been putting hitters away, but the stuff is there. I mean, it's going to come back at like he's going to put it all together at some point, and his price tag is plummeting, which is the thing that I think is really important. You know, he's 7,200 on DraftKings, 6,900 on FanDuel. A little bit more expensive relative to other guys on Yahoo, but on these sites, especially where you need an SP2 or on FanDuel, if you're just trying to pay up for a bunch of hitting, the ceiling is there for the guy with, the stuff that he has, a mid 90s fastball, a really, really good off speed pitches. And there are strikeouts in the Mets lineup. I wish there were more righties in there. We only have 4 of them plus Matt's the pitcher. And you do have, 4 pretty good left-handed hitters. So it's certainly a dangerous spot for Pivetta. But I think in tournaments, like you're not looking to him in cash games at all. But in tournaments, I still think this is one of the few games on the slate actually where I do intend on being on both sides.
What about Steven Matz here against the Phillies?
No Hoskins is nice for Mats. The Phillies lineup is as appealing, I think, as you could really get. Mats
Yep.
does get strikeouts against righties, about 24.5% of righties since last season, but he also struggles with home runs. And going into Philadelphia is not particularly good for him. Also, a lot of speed in this Philadelphia lineup, which scares me because despite being left-handed, Mats isn't that good at holding runners. I think there's enough pitching on this slate, and Mats' price tag has come up a bit because he's been pitching well, that I don't really need to get the Mats. I'd rather go to the Phillies. And even though the lineup's not as appealing without Hoskins in it because you lose that big right-handed power bat, it becomes a little bit cheaper lineup where you still have some upside. Kingery's not a particularly good hitter, but he can run here. Same goes for Cesar Hernandez. Altair is actually a guy that has some power and a little bit of speed. It's still a formidable lineup at the top with McCutchen through Real Muto. And then you just kind of get some cheap guys that can fill it out. So I still like Philadelphia here a bit more than I like Mats.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you. You're like you said though, if there was going to be a lineup where you don't hate Mats, this would be it. Uh, just no Reese Hoskins, Odubel Herrera. I don't really care about that, but the bottom of this, Kingery's fast. By the way, like the
Right.
guy's actually, what's that?
I agreed. Yeah, like he can't hit, but if he somehow gets on base, he can run.
Yep. Yeah, he's really fast. So the reason you don't see him steal a ton of bases is what you just said. He just doesn't get on base
Right.
very often. But when he does, yeah, he's going to run. I think it is a good point though. Like if as far as base stealing matchups goes, this could turn out really well if the Phillies are getting aboard. You said you're going to both sides of Pivetta and the Mets. I think that's a smart way to look at it as well. But which Mets are you liking the most of the Nimos, the Confortos, the Canoes, Pete Alonso, McNeil's another lefty in there. So you have 4 lefties in the top 6 of this lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the lefties match up the best, obviously, against Pivetta. But the reason that I think the Mets are really appealing is they're getting the ballpark boost. And then you have Robbie Cano at a really cheap price tag. He's like 3,700 on DraftKings, 31 on FanDuel, for no apparent reason. Like, I have no idea why he's so cheap. But that's at a second base position that's not that strong. Wilson Ramos, I think, is probably the second best catcher on the slate behind JT Realmuto. Even though he is a righty, he puts the ball in play. It's a positive park shift for him, and he has some power. So you fill out a couple of weak positions there, and then you get the guys like Brandon Nimmo, like Michael Conforto, who have big time power from the left side against Pivetta. So I think it's a deep lineup. I would say Cano is probably my favorite when you factor in price and position. But if we were taking all of that out, then I guess it would have to be like Conforto.
The wind at Citizens Bank Park yesterday is one of the strangest things you'll ever see. Just trash all over the field. And then it cooled down. It was like 50 degrees. The wind stopped. Dominic Smith was out there like he was in the Arctic. He was dressed like head to toe, but I'm thinking this guy would never last at Lambeau Field in, December playing
Yeah.
football.
Nah, I missed it, but that sounds
Yeah.
entertaining.
Neither would I, by the way. I'm not a huge fan of the cold weather, but I found it pretty funny. Let's talk Washington, San Francisco. Steven Strasburg, Derek Rodriguez. Rodriguez, since he came into the league, has been one of those guys where I really have no problem not targeting or not picking on him, but haven't been huge on playing the guy either. There just, isn't a ton of upside in this arm. But let's start with Strasburg. I mean, he's facing a San Francisco team that is dreadfully bad. I mean, offensively, they're going to be bad all season. This is not fluky. This should be expected. On the season thus far, we're almost 3 weeks into it against right-handed pitchers. The San Francisco Giants are striking out actually at I think it's a top 10 clip. I'm pretty sure. Let me see here. They are striking out at 25.4. So the sixth highest clip. They're walking at only 7%, which is bottom 5. And then I don't need to get into the collective WOBA, ISO, and all that because you already know how bad it is, Adam. The question was whether or not you're looking to pay up for Strasburg, who's the highest priced guy on Yahoo at 47, which isn't crazy given that like Bauer was 55 and guys like Scherzer were 58. 47 is not crazy. 10-3 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel also the most expensive at 10-9. By the way, the most expensive on DraftKings is Tyler Glass now, but Strasburg is expensive everywhere. Is it worth paying up for him in a pretty spectacular matchup for you?
I think it's fine, but I think I'll end up as long as ownership projections stay similar to how they are now. For one, I don't think you have to pay all the way up at pitcher today, especially in tournaments. And for two, I think that I would rather get to Glass now than Strasburg if ownership's going to be similar or Strasburg's going to be the higher owned of the two. Strasburg, we know what he is at this point. He's a very good pitcher who I think tends to be a little bit more expensive than he deserves in DFS
I
just
agree.
because of his name and because people flock to him. What'd you say?
I agree.
Yeah. It's obviously a good spot against the Giants. There's 3 hitters in this lineup: Panic, Posey, and Belt, who since the start of the 2017 season have been above average hitters against righties. Panic actually has been exactly average. Posey is basically dead at this point. Brandon Belt's still really good, but it's just not an intimidating lineup. I don't buy into the strikeout numbers so far this year, especially adding Pilar to the lineup is another low strikeout guy. Gerardo Parra is a low strikeout guy, but they just can't hit. So it's obviously a good spot for Strasburg. It's just that I think the upside is higher on Glass now in his matchup with Baltimore. I think that there's a ton of upper mid-range guys that you can get that give you similar ceilings or the same ceilings to Strasburg. So for those reasons, he's not someone that I'm like jamming into my lineups. And kind of on the flip side, while I'm not particularly interested in the Giants, it is a positive park shift for them, and Strasburg is going to have ownership. So where you have guys like Brandon Belt that are really cheap, like he's a good hitter with a cheap price tag. He actually has multi-position eligibility on DraftKings as well. Brandon Crawford at a shortstop position that's not the best is only 2,900 on DraftKings. You can get to these guys as leverage plays, and it's not costing you a lot in terms of opportunity.
All right. Washington and Derek Rodriguez. I gave you my small piece on him. I generally kind of like to stay away from both spots on a 13 game or 15 game slate. I'm more inclined to do that. Where are you at on both sides of this?
That's normally where I am as well. It is obviously a huge park shift for him going to DC instead of pitching in San Francisco. And he's not a guy that misses a lot of bats. So that does concern me, especially when you have as much power as Washington does. I think that Juan Soto is a bit underpriced. He's not cheap, but for how good he is, I think he's a little underpriced. Ryan Zimmerman obviously has power, but it's not my favorite stack. But I would say they're in my top 10, just not in my top 5.
All right, that's fair. Implied run total for the Washington Nationals today is, I think it's up around 4.7. So it's certainly not bad. 3.4 for San Francisco, the second lowest on the slate. Let's talk about Tampa Bay and Baltimore. Tyler Glass now is blossoming into a stud, and I'm loving every minute of it. What I don't love is the fact that he hasn't thrown more than 85 pitches, even though he's been stellar in all of these starts where he easily could have come out for another inning, was not slowing down even a little bit in any of them. So that's at least something to think about here. Even though it's a phenomenal matchup against Baltimore, they have the lowest run total on the slate at 3.1. They're a team that, as we know, is going to be terrible all season long. They are likely going to strike out at a decent enough clip. And there's really nothing about this matchup that I don't like. It's inside a very pitcher-friendly venue at Tropicana. The only thing that gives me pause, outside of Glasnow's price point being, you know, way higher than it's been, and obviously because he's been very good, is simply the fact that he's thrown 77, 82, and 85 pitches in 3 starts, despite being electric in all of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that I find concerning as well. It wouldn't be surprising to see them kind of keep him, try and keep him around like that 90 pitch mark, I guess, especially when we're talking about Tampa and we know that they are not afraid to be unconventional with how they handle their pitchers. But he's still not like he's expensive. He's the most expensive pitcher on DraftKings, second most on FanDuel. But it's not like he's 12K or anything like that. He can still go out there. If he goes 6 innings, picks up a win against Baltimore, he can strike out 10 guys in those 6 innings here and be perfectly fine. So I still think that he has a nice ceiling, but again, like I was saying with Strasburg, I don't feel like you have to pay all the way up for pitching on this slate. There's a ton of guys that have high ceilings. I do love the spot for Glasnow, no question about it. Great pitcher's park, really bad Baltimore lineup, plenty of strikeouts in it, not a whole lot of guys that you're concerned about what they do with the bat. VR would be like the only guy I'm interested in on Baltimore because he will steal if he gets on. He's leading off, so it's unlikely he has anyone on base in front of him at any point. So, yeah, I think that it's a really good spot for Glasnow. I'm just not completely sold on having to pay all the way up a pitcher tonight.
Right. Yeah, deep slate. And he could throw 88 pitches, 85 pitches, and still have 35 like DraftKings points.
Right.
It wouldn't be crazy. But I do like knowing that I would like knowing that, if he's 80 pitches through 6 or through 5, that he's coming out for another inning. Like there's a lot of pitchers in this league where for a fact that they're coming back out.
Right. And that's
don't
one
know
spot
that with Glasnow.
That's one spot where Strasburg does have an edge on him.
Exactly.
For as much as Glasnow has the better stuff and the better strikeout upside, both because of matchup and just because of talent, Strasburg, we do know like he'll go out there and he's going to get his pitches.
Right. That is the one clear benefit there. If it's something that pushes you to one side or the other. Let's keep it going in terms of bats. Dylan Bundy allowed 41 home runs last year. He's allowed 6, Adam, already through 3 starts this year, 4 and 2 over his last 2 starts. This is a guy who Dylan Bundy is one of those guys who can go out there and strike out 9, or he could go out there and give up 4, like legitimately give up 4 home runs. It's happened more than a couple times with Dylan Bundy. And then you have a Tampa Bay team that, just finds ways to produce runs. Today you have Meadows, who's been phenomenal, Pham, Choi, Diaz, Brandon Lau, Avisel Garcia, Kiermaier, Robertson, and Michael Perez. Which side of this do you like? I have a feeling you like both sides, but I'm going to let you speak on this.
I have interest in both sides. I do prefer the Tampa Bay side, though.
It's hard not to.
Right. So, I mean, the argument for Bundy would be, for one, his slider actually looked really, really good in his last start against Oakland. I had a ton of him in that start. Was really excited. He had like a no-hitter through 4 with, I think, like 8 strikeouts or something. And then he just started, missing with his 90-mile-an-hour fastball, and it was getting bombed out of Camden Yards. But pitching in Tampa, obviously, it does take away some of the home run concerns because it's one of the least favorable parks for opposing power. The downside is that there are 5 lefties in the lineup for Tampa Bay, and he does have a much lower strikeout percentage against lefties than righties. Also, a couple guys here that don't strike out, with Yandy Diaz being a tough guy to strike out in particular. Also, a lot of power in the lineup that can take advantage of his mistakes. So, if I get the Bundy in some tournament lineups, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's kind of similar to Pivetta, where he's worse than Pivetta. He's worse than Pivetta, but the park's better. But I do really like Tampa here, especially some of their price tags. G-Man Choi actually has the highest ISO on the team over the last couple of seasons. He's inexpensive.
First righties, right?
Yeah, versus righties. He's inexpensive. You have Brandon Lau at second base at a reasonable price tag, a ton of power there. Pham, we know, has power. Meadows is expensive. He's really been priced up. But I just think that I give the edge to the left-handed power bats in this Tampa lineup.
You kind of have to, and the reason is when you're looking at stacks, guys like Bundy, when they're not on, you're not scoring runs on singles and walks. He's going to give up home runs. and that's pretty important. Also, he allowed 17 stolen bases last year, so it's not like you can't steal on Dylan Bundy. Uh, you've
Yeah,
got
also a really good point there.
what's that?
I said, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, so there's more than one way to get it done here, and you have a few guys in the lineup that can steal bases. I just think overall, from a power and speed standpoint, it's hard to find a better stack just from an upside standpoint than Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and also, and we mention it pretty much every time, but in a day and age where most bullpens are lights out, the Orioles are not one of them.
Yep.
So it's something we've talked about in Slack too, as far as stacking goes. How sometimes stacking can be a little bit full stacking is a little bit less advantageous than it used to be because normally once you get into the sixth inning, no matter who you're playing, you're just getting these guys throwing 100 miles an hour. The Orioles are actually a team where if you get to Bundy early and get into that bullpen, you're in at favorable matchups throughout the rest of the game.
Right. That's a good point for sure. And I'm not as worried about the park here because Bundy serves up meat wherever he goes. Let's talk about the Cubs in Miami. Jose Quintana, Pablo Lopez. Quintana, man, he has definitely looked different recently. He has 22 strikeouts over his first 14 innings, 11 Ks against Pittsburgh last time out, 8 against Texas in his first start in Arlington. He had a rough one against Milwaukee, but nevertheless, Quintana is missing a lot of bats this season. You wrote the deep dive today, so my guess is, because I know when you're writing it, we spent the most of the research for the deep dive that Adam and I switch off each day is pitching, right? Because with hitting, it's pretty basic, there isn't a whole lot to be said, but with pitching, you really want to dig into everything. I'm guessing whether or not he's in the deep dive, I'm guessing you dug deep into what's going on with Quintana today. Did you come up with anything?
Not really. I mean, I still just don't really buy into him. His swinging strike stuff this year still isn't anything special. I'm trying to pull the numbers back up now, but I think it was like an 11% swinging strike percentage to righties, and 9 or not 11 to lefties, 9 to righties. I think.
I can pull it up right now if you
Yeah,
want.
never mind. I was looking since the start of last season. The swing strike stuff has been better this season.
14% and
Yeah.
13.8 to righties, 13.5 to lefties. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's good for him.
Last year it was 8.3 to righties, 10.7 to lefty. Granted, much smaller sample here, but yeah.
Yeah. The thing that stands out though is that he is getting swings and misses on his curveball again, which is a really big deal because that's the pitch that he used to really rely on. And over the last few years, it had been really ineffective. So it'll be interesting to see, what happens with it. Obviously, it's a good matchup. It's a good park. Miami's terrible. Good park to pitch in. Doesn't even look like it's warm in Miami today, or relative to how it normally is. So I do like Quintana here, and that's something that I pretty much never say. The problem is just that, on the one pitcher sites, there's a million pitchers to choose from. On the two pitcher sites, you have guys like Shane Bieber in the same price range. You have a lot of different options. And Quintana's still, from an upside standpoint, he's $1,200 more than Pivetta. He's $1,300 more than Bundy. I feel better about Quintana than either of those pitchers, but I'm not sure that it's worth the huge difference in price.
That's fair. I will say this much though, because there are so many pitchers, Quintana's not going to have outrageous ownership either.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Like right now, 14% ownership on DraftKings. Put this on an 8-game slate, he's at like 30+%. So that makes me like him a little bit more, just knowing that. I mean, it's a terrible Miami team, just god awful across the board. Second highest K rate versus righties this year, 400+ plate appearances. They don't generate walks. They don't have power. It's at a great park. So kind of my line of thinking is even if Quintana isn't totally for real, he could at least pretend to be for real for one more start against Miami.
Yeah, no question there.
Pablo Lopez, you know what I found really funny about him? I mentioned it this morning. So I was looking at his pitch mix like per start this year. And I remember DMing you saying, hey, keep an eye on Lopez. It looks like he might not be throwing the two-seamer anymore. Because in his first start, he threw it only, I think it was like 7% of the time. And then last start, he threw it only 8% of the time. Against Atlanta, he threw it 27% of the time. So it might be a matchup thing. It might have been the fact that he allowed more base. Yeah, my guess is he probably allowed more base runners and was trying to induce double plays without much success. That could have certainly been it. But yeah, definitely less than we had seen last year, where almost every start, I think he made like 10 or 15 outings. Almost every start was like 20 to 30% on the two seamer. But then again, this is just a matchup that doesn't do a whole lot for me, and I don't know what his upside looks like. What do you think about Lopez or Chicago bats?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at too. I've seen him projected pretty highly in some places, but I don't really agree with it, especially from an upside standpoint. Like, I think Lopez has good stuff. I think he's going to be a perfectly fine pitcher, but he's someone who I would expect to be better actually against lefties than righties, just because his best pitch is his changeup. He gets a lot of swings and misses on it, but that's a pitch that is more effective against hitters of the opposite handedness. And the Cubs actually loaded up on righties here. You don't have like a Ben Zobrist or Schwarber in the lineup. You have David Bodie in there. You have Alberto Mora in the lineup. Only three lefties with Descalso, Rizzo, and Hayward. Rizzo doesn't strike out. Hayward doesn't strike out. Descalso is not a huge strikeout guy. Just a pretty tough lineup, I think, for Lopez to really reach a ceiling. I'm not really in love with Chicago bats either. Like Chris Bryant's okay, Javi Baez is okay, but I have guys that I prefer at all those positions when you factor in the park and the fact that I don't think Lopez is bad.
Yeah, me too. This is kind of a spot where I don't really have all that much. It's Quintana for me here, and then pretty much moving on. Let's talk Atlanta and Arizona then. Robbie Ray on the bump for Arizona and Max Fried for Atlanta. Look, two solid lefties. Robbie Ray outside of Chase Field has been much better, at least over the past couple of seasons. Was great against Texas at home the other week, but you and I pointed this out. Like, Texas can't get dangerous from the right side. I mean, it's really tough for them to do that. They will strike out. Whereas with Atlanta, where are you where are you hoping for the big strikeout numbers to come from in this lineup?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem for me, that and the depth of the slate. Is it shocking if Robbie Ray is like the highest scoring pitcher? Not really. It can happen. Like, he has really, really good strikeout stuff, but this is a Atlanta team that doesn't strike out a lot, and they're running out probably the best lineup they could for this spot. You have a lineup loaded with righties, with the exception of Freeman batting third, who can hold his own against lefties and is tough to strike out. Inciarte hitting eighth, who's tough to strike out. Camargo is really good from the right side of the plate. Albies is better from the right side. Acuna is obviously really good. Donaldson has struggled, but he's hitting the ball hard, at least when he makes contact. It's just a really, I think, dangerous spot that I don't really feel the need to go to, with Robbie Ray not being priced down either.
That's where I'm at too. I think I said the same thing earlier. If Robbie Ray was like 8,200, and you're getting him priced for the matchup, I think that would make a big difference for me. But I don't feel like I'm getting a deal on him, so I don't really care to go there. What about the other side of this one?
I have some interest in Fried because his stuff is just ridiculously good, and I do think that there are some strikeouts for him here in this Arizona lineup, but it's not a huge priority for me just because there are so many options. I have other guys that I prefer, whether it's just because they're cheaper and they let me get more bats, or because I like their matchup a little bit better, like Quintana, or I like even Shane Bieber going against 6 or 7 righties. So I'm hoping to get to some Fried in tournaments, but not anything that I think my night will revolve around.
Okay. Any hitters here that stand out to you from either side?
Not really. Tons of respect for both pitchers. Like Albies and Albies, Acuna, Camargo would be the three that I'm most interested from the game.
And that pretty much does it.
Yep.
All right. I'm with you there. I don't really have anything to add. Uh, looking over this lineup, is Christian Walker batting fifth a decent play? I'm sure I don't. He's all right. Uh, Wilmer Flores has always hit lefties well. I understand it, but Fried is good. You just talked like he's a good pitcher, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this game, not feature much scoring at all. I did find it interesting. Atlanta has a 4.6 run total here, which was pretty not alarming, but interesting. 4.0 runs for the Arizona Diamondbacks. But there are just a lot of good matchups, Adam, and I think that's what it comes down to. Minnesota and Toronto, you have Kyle Gibson against Anibal Sanchez. I gave Josh my Gibson spiel earlier today. I'm sure if you wanted to, you could repeat it. We've been saying the same thing. Both of us been saying the same thing for 2+ years now. He's going up against Toronto, and he has really good stuff if he wants to use it. Toronto's not very good. Gibson's not very expensive, we haven't talked about this, so I don't know where you sit on Gibson, but we're about to find out now.
He's whatever as an SP2 for me. Currently, I have him in my DraftKings cash lineup because he's $6,400.
You have him in cash, huh?
Yeah, just because of the bats I get. And that could very easily change. It's just where I'm at right now. Like Toronto's not a particularly good offensive team. I just don't really know how much upside Gibson has here either. Going against 6 left-handed hitters, his strikeout percentage drops from like 24+% against righties to about 18% against lefties. He's still not throwing his slider or his changeup or anything other than his fastballs as much as he should be, especially to lefties. You have his changeup at 23% this year, slider at 13, curveball at 12, but so he's throwing his, four seamer, his two seam over 50% of the time
Yeah,
again. To righties,
disappointing.
to righties, he's throwing his sinker 45% of the time for God knows what reason. It doesn't make sense. It's really
So
annoying.
disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, he's still better than a $6,400 price tag is the thing. And we know this Toronto offense is not the scariest offense. So I think he's underpriced. It's just a matter of, how much upside's really there for him against a lefty heavy lineup from Toronto.
Yeah. Change up 23% of the time against lefties, which, is fine. He has a curveball too that has actually gotten good swing and miss numbers when he throws it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Also, if you do roster Gibson, just turn the game on after the first at bat so that you miss him throwing 18 pitches to Eric Sogard to start the first inning. Happens every single time.
Yeah. I just see Gibson as being a guy where I don't know if there's gonna be much gray area here today. He's either gonna give you a really solid start at 6,400, uh, or he's gonna be the same Gibson that we've been hoping that he wouldn't be, and we've seen so much of that lately that it's tough to know which one we're gonna get. Um, the moment I start noticing a change, if we ever do, will be the moment that I just go full in, like
Oh yeah,
everywhere
yeah.
on Gibson.
I see it opposite from you though. I see it as like entirely gray area where like
He just
I,
finishes with like 11.
yeah, like I don't really see him getting blown up all that
You
often,
could
and
be
I don't
right.
see him like being the guy you have to have that often.
No, you're probably right about that. The more I think of it. Yeah. It's just this Toronto lineup is one that can just lay down entirely.
Yeah.
But
If they had an extra righty or two in there, I would like love Gibson here. The fact that they have all the lefties, even though they're not all good lefties, but they have all the lefties just makes me think like he gets a lot of ground ball outs. He gives up a run or two. He strikes out 5 or something like that, and he's completely mediocre.
yeah, very possible. It's crazy. The guy's had like a 12% swing and strike rate in 3 straight seasons.
Yeah,
It's swing
yeah.
and strike rate 13.5% against righties, 12.1% against lefties this year. Last year, 13.6 against righties, 10.3 against lefties, which that's not great, but against lefties isn't like you're saying. It definitely makes a big difference. But even like his expected ISO is always really low. I don't know.
He should be so much better than he is.
So much better. We
Both of
don't
these
have
pitchers should be so much better than they are.
what's that?
Both pitchers in this game should be a lot better than they are.
Totally agree. 100%. But Aaron, I'll be honest with you. I forget who I had this discussion with earlier, talking about like, yeah, I'm going to load up on Aaron Sanchez's opponent. Even if I think he's going to give up runs, ask yourself, how are these runs going to cross the plate? He gets a lot of ground balls, and he really doesn't give up a lot of power. He just, like he's his own worst enemy in a lot of these spots, Adam. And his ground ball rate has come down over the past 1 or 2 seasons, but he'll still get an above average amount of ground balls, and he'll still do a very good job of limiting home runs when healthy. And I do think he is healthy. So I don't know. Maybe you have more interest in Minnesota than I do. It's just not a team I'm looking towards very heavily today.
I feel pretty similarly to Minnesota as I do to the Nats. Like they're a top 10 stack for me, not a top 5. I do like how many lefties they have in the lineup. I like their prices, and I like how difficult they are to strike out. Kepler, Polanco, Rosario, all difficult to strike out. Astudillo, impossible to strike out. And then you get to the bottom of the order where that's not really the case. But Aaron Sanchez, better against righties than lefties. This season, he is off to a good start against lefties numbers wise with a 274 WOBA, a .030 ISO. but his expected WOBA is 100 points higher than his actual WOBA. His expected ISO is 170 points higher than his actual ISO. He is getting some swings and misses, but still throwing his sinker 30% of the time, getting a 4% swinging strike rate on that. He's getting no swings and misses on his changeup at 5.9%, which is a big deal for him. We'd seen him. I got excited about changeup he was throwing last year. It was one of the hardest changeups in baseball, but it looked exactly like his fastball and had a ton of arm side run. It just hasn't translated into as good a pitch as I thought it would. I think it is a dangerous spot for him. It's just a matter of normally it's base hit, double, walk, double. When he gets in trouble, and normally not giving up a ton of home runs.
Last year, if you took all starting pitchers who had thrown at least 40 innings against lefties, and you looked at their K minus BB rate, Aaron Sanchez was not just bad, but it was terrible. It was negative. It was minus 1.5. If you remember, there were 3 pitchers that were just so bad in that category. More if you want to get to like Giolito and Lynn and Philmeyer, but it was Aaron Sanchez, Julio Teheran, and Tyler Chatwood. All of them miserable against lefties. And like you said, seeing some improvement there, but he'll never have even any semblance of upside if he can never get strikeouts and just continues to dish out a ton of walks against lefties. So again, yeah, like I said, it's generally one of those spots where I'll just move on and hope that he continues to do what he normally does, walk a bunch of guys, not give up a lot of home runs and drive in runs on singles and stuff.
Yeah, the only thing positive that I can take away for Sanchez so far is he's throwing his curveball more this year than he was last year, but he's still not throwing it like a ton. He's throwing it like 20% to righties and 17 to lefties compared to like 11 and 12 last year. And that's a pitch that I think is a good pitch and he should throw it more. But until we're getting, more of that and we're getting like any swings and misses on his changeup, there's no real reason to be afraid of him or to roster him.
All right. Do you want to hit on anything else in this game?
No, I don't think so.
All right, let's talk about Milwaukee and St. Louis. Christian Yelich coming off a monster 3 home run game yesterday. Pretty incredible, man. Dakota Hudson is exactly the type of guy that can get hammered against that type of team. He's made 4 starts this season. No, 3. Sorry, one was out of the bullpen. He's allowed 5 home runs, and all 5 of them have come against the Brewers at Miller Park. It's a tough spot, but now you get Jack Flaherty, slight upgrade, and Brandon Woodruff, joking, obviously, significant upgrade, and Brandon Woodruff here who, look, Woodruff is getting strikeouts, striking out well over a batter per 9 to start the year. Both of these pitchers have elements to their game or the matchup that concern me today. The park doesn't help either. But let's break down this pitching matchup at Miller Park between a very solid righty in Jack Flaherty and a guy in Woodruff who I think in the right spots has a lot of upside, but it's hard to say if this is actually the right spot. Although you're going to get a St. Louis team that will run out a lot of right-handed bats.
Yeah, I mean, I have some interest in Woodruff on SP2 sites just because of his price tag and because of how many righties there are in the lineup for St. Louis. The problem, of course, is that they're really good righties for the most part.
Right,
and so
exactly.
it's not, it's not like you can just run someone out there blindly. But since last season, Woodruff's throwing 517 pitches to right-handed hitters, 12.4% swinging strike percentage, 297 expected WOBA, 137 expected ISO. Mixes his pitch as well, basically fastball slider, but he throws his slider about 33% of the time. It's fine to get to some Woodruff here. He's no more dangerous, I don't think, than Nick Pivetta or Dylan Bundy at similar price points. So I would expect to have a little bit of Woodruff mixed in as an SP2. Flaherty, I think, is the better pitcher out of the two, but he is more expensive. He does have a really difficult matchup against the Brewers. You have more lefties, especially in the middle of the order, with 4 in the top 6. Some kind of appealing price points with Moustakas at only 4K, with Shaw at 3,600, but I do have guys that I prefer over them. So I'm not really getting to. I don't love hitters from this game, but I'm not getting to a ton of pitching either.
Okay. And I think that's pretty fair. That's where I'm at as well. Woodruff on another slate, I might have a lot more interest in, but like you said, St. Louis, a lot of righties, a lot of good, patient, talented righties that can make for a really tough outing for him. just so we make sure to hit on everything. Are you looking at bats here individually or stacks?
I'll get probably some Travis Shaw and Moustakis just because of their price points. Christian Yelich obviously is really good, but he's too close to Mike Trout in price for me to expect to get a lot. Um,
It's the same thing I had mentioned this
yeah,
morning. Like it's as good as Yelich is, Flaherty's good. Really good, actually, and atop the outfield position, you have Mike Trout against Minor. If Bellinger plays against Tyler Mahle, I mean, he's been awful against lefties. So, and I'll even throw. And look, I'm not comparing Meadows to Yelich, but it's baseball, and when you have really good matchups, sometimes a good but not amazing batter can become a really amazing play.
yep,
So there are a lot of guys up top that I like in the outfield in
yeah,
great
like
spots.
yeah. I'm not saying I'll have no Brewer stacks because they do have so much power. I stack them pretty much
Sure.
every slate, but they're certainly not a priority.
Let's talk about the Angels and Rangers. This game, for the most part, didn't disappoint. Joey Gallo's got one of the sweetest swings in the world, man. Another second deck home run yesterday. Beautiful. 3 for 5 with a double, a home run, and 2 RBIs. His 5th home run of the season. I love this guy. I don't care. Strike out as much as you want, fella, as long as you're going to hit bombs. He's got a matchup today against Jaime Barria. Josh and I were breaking this down earlier, and I found something really interesting.
What's
Just
that?
looking at Barria's pitch mix, and I know last year you were pretty heavy on targeting righties against him, but something I found strange, and you don't generally see this all that much for starters. So when you look at the pitches that he throws, he's a 2-pitch pitcher against righties and a 4-pitch pitcher against lefties. Against lefties, he will use the four-seamer, not a lot, a four-seamer, the sinker, the slider, and the changeup. Against righties, he is exclusively four-seamer slider, which I find really interesting. That you don't use the two-seamer at all either. Never uses the changeup, just four-seamer slider, and maybe the fact that he only has those 2 pitches against righties makes him a more predictable pitcher and easier to hit.
Yeah, I remembered like feeling strongly about taking hitters from one-handedness against them. I was thinking it was lefties until I
It
dug
was
in today.
righties.
Yeah. So obviously no right-handed power here, but I'm still not shying away from these Texas bats, especially Gallo. Barria
Sure.
still doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. He gets swings and misses to lefties on his changeup and on his slider, but he doesn't really put them away. He still only struck out 19.9% of lefties last season, and when Gallo hits the ball, it just goes. It's still, I think, a plus spot for Gallo. I still like him. And you just have dangerous lefties here at reasonable prices too, with Shin-Soo Choo leading off a 201 ISO over the last few seasons against righties. You have Mazzara, who is a little above league average against righties. I just think it's still a high upside spot in a good park. I'm probably a little bit lower on Texas as a stack than I would assume the field's going to be, but I still think they have a really high ceiling. I still love Joey Gallo and to a lesser extent Shin-Soo Choo as one-off plays.
I'm with you. And again, I'm with you. I'm not concerned about this being a bunch of lefties, but I really find it interesting the way that Barria has been. His struggles have come more against righties and uses only 2. I don't know. It's strange to me. You don't see it very often. But you're at Globe Life. There's really nothing not to like about this. Going to be close to 80 degrees at first pitch. I mean, I'm perfectly okay with getting here. And I'm not worried about it at all. On the other side, Mike Minor, who I think I said this morning. Mike Minor's not as bad as people say he is. He's not great. He's not, but he's not terrible either. And he will give up some home runs, particularly to righties, which is nice when you have Mike Trout on the other side. But yeah, look, I'm not surprised to see that the Angels have the second highest total on the slate, 5.1, and the Rangers have the highest at 5.6. But curious to get your take here on the Angels, where you have Mike Trout back in the lineup. I mean, I obviously can't say I don't like David Fletcher because he's leading off and you're getting him. And Drelton Simmons makes contact. He just has virtually zero power. And Pujols over the last several years has been way worse with the platoon advantage, oddly enough. And then like Lucroy, when's the last time he's had power? So you got 4 righties atop the lineup. But we don't have to talk much about Trout. How much of these righties do you really like against Minor?
I mean, Trout, but that's like it. Like
That's
that's
what
the
I
thing.
said. I'm saying
Right.
like other than Trout.
Right, like, I'm gonna obviously have a ton of him, and I get the
Right.
appeal of going to the Angels because they're cheap, they're in Texas, big ballpark upgrade, but Miner's not bad, like you said. He'll give up home runs, but there's not a lot of power here. He's pretty good at preventing runs overall, and it's like every time he pitches, everyone's just like, "Oh, I can't wait to take hitters against him. Oh, man, I can't believe my guys got shut down by Mike Minor."
Yep.
It's
Yep.
he's not bad, and this offense is not good. They do put the ball in play, so I'm not really interested in Minor, and that is a reason why I think that they're a bit more appealing than normal. Is they do put the ball in play, and it's a smaller park in warm weather, so there is plenty of upside for them. It's just that none of them are good except for Mike Trout.
Exactly. I mean, seriously, it's an overstated matchup when it comes to Mike Minor, who is very capable of going out there and having a nice game, even if he's not getting the strikeouts. I mean, you love Mike Trout, we all do. Um, I obviously don't like. Okay, if you were to say, okay, who are your guys in order that you like the most? Mike Trout, like far ahead of the pack, not even close. And then I would say it would probably have to just be David Fletcher, and it's really only because of where he's batting in the order. That's really it.
Yeah, for me it would be Trout, and then like the Grand Canyon, and then Simmons, Fletcher, Lucroy,
Right.
I guess. Like
No, I hear you. I know. All right. Top bats for Texas.
Gallo, Chu, Cabrera, Mazzara, Andrus.
All right. $15,000 guaranteed, 3K to first. Contest over there on Yahoo on the DFS tab. They are proud sponsors of the Deeper Dive. And a lot of times over there, you can get the no management fees. Generally, the management fees are pretty small to begin with. Two pitcher site. The pricing, the salaries are definitely different, but you get used to it. It took me a little while, but once I did, it was definitely easy to get used to it. And I think for people that aren't looking or don't have time to MME every day and use Cruncher, having a 10 max entry is pretty nice for a large group of people out there that want to enjoy hand building lineups and maybe put 1, 5, or 10 of them in.
Yeah, I think for anyone who like outside of a very small niche of players, I would say your first, 100, 200, however much you can get in on Yahoo, your first like $200 of entries or whatever should be maxing out the 10 person Yahoo tournaments.
For sure. I mean,
Speaking of price differences, Mike Trout is $1 more expensive than Joey Gallo on Yahoo.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Joey Gallo is a much worse play on Yahoo than he is on like DraftKings.
I mean, Tommy Pham is $2 less than Mike Trout. So is Michael Conforto. Whew.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Trout's
got
price
one
is
for you.
nice.
I got one for you. Mike Trout is 27. Alex Gordon's 24.
Wow.
That is insane.
Is Trout the most expensive? So he's the same price as Yelich.
Yeah.
I
I
think
don't
he's the
think there's
most
a pitcher
expensive, but
only
it's
thing where
tied with
we can
Yelich.
like let's see here. The most expensive, yeah. Mondesi Alonso is 20. Holy hell, Pete Alonso is 27.
Bellinger's 27.
Yeah. So there are definitely ways to take advantage of the pricing here. Some people are not going to pay attention to it and just jam in whoever because they like them on DraftKings or FanDuel. Uh, you know, prioritizing Yahoo pricing and really getting into it is going to make a big difference. It's crazy how some of the pricing here can make a huge impact on how your lineups look. Just because someone is a top play does not mean you have to wildly overpay for them, and probably means that you can get guys way cheaper than they should be as well. So head over to yahoo.com and check it out. There's still plenty of spots left in there. And of course, plenty of other contests all throughout the lobby that recommend you check out. And also, if you haven't checked out awesomeo.com yet, we'd love to have you do so and join the family. Sign up on the homepage. If you click that and use the promo code Deeper Dive, all one word, when you sign up, you'll get 50% off your first month of premium subscription. You get half off your first month of premium subscription. Just use the promo code Deeper Dive when you sign up, when you check out. You get all of our ownership projections, player projections for MLB, NBA, NHL, PGA, NASCAR, MMA, NFL, all of our other sports. Anything that has DFS, we cover it. We got great guys providing content in all of those sports, articles as well, and of course Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, his rankings, all of his content, the Fantasy Cruncher ad on the lineup builder, so much more. Just use the promo code Deeper Dive when you sign up. Get 50% off your first month, and say what's up in the premium Slack chat when you do. We'll be happy to show you around. All right, here we go, Adam. We've got a few to go here, and we're making pretty good time. White Sox, Kansas City, Jorge Lopez, Ronaldo Lopez, the battle of the Lopez brothers. What is your take here in pitching?
My take has completely changed since I wrote the deep dive article today. Now that I've seen this Kansas City lineup, I'm not going to say that I have confidence in Ronaldo Lopez, but $6,000 on DraftKings facing a Mondesi-less Kansas City lineup where essentially you now have Whit Merrifield and like Alex Gordon, kind of, I guess.
Do not doubt the GOAT O'Hearn.
I mean, yeah, okay. He has the highest WOBA on the team against righties. He also struck out 24.2%. Yeah. I mean, O'Hearn's a fine tournament play. But
he will strike out for
right.
sure. Of course.
Yeah, what I'm getting to is so Merrifield has struck out 14.9% of the time against righties since 2017. Gordon's at 21.8. Cam Gallagher's at 17.8 in 100 at bats. But other than that, Hamilton's 22, Owings is 24, Dozier's 26.7, Soler is 30, Duda's 27.4, O'Hearn is 24.2. The only hitters in this lineup that are above average in terms of production against righties are O'Hearn, Merrifield, and Duda. Lopez has been bad this year. Don't get me wrong. He's not getting swings and misses. He's just been absolutely awful. He's not good at holding runners, which is good for guys like Billy Hamilton and Whit Merrifield. But kind of where we talked about Kyle Gibson, whereas I think Kyle Gibson does fall into that gray area a lot where he doesn't get blown up, but he doesn't have a whole lot of upside. I feel the exact opposite about Lopez, where he gets blown up a lot here, but he also goes out there and gives you 26 fantasy points, probably more than Gibson does.
All right. I don't disagree that the lineup makes a big difference. Earlier today, I had no interest in Ronaldo Lopez.
No, neither did I.
And I still worry. I mean, I have no faith in him.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, this lineup definitely gives him an easier path. Definitely gives him an easier path to success. Thoughts on Jorge Lopez and the hitters in this one?
I'm much more interested in the White Sox hitters than I am in Jorge Lopez. Whereas I'll probably go to both sides on Ronaldo and the Royals. I'm mostly just interested in Yohan Moncada. I like quite a bit. Abreu, Alonso. Unfortunately, they play the same position, but you also get a cheap high upside catching option, batting seventh, which means he won't have virtually any ownership in Wellington Castillo. Jorge Lopez is kind of just a guy. He's not bad. He's not good. There's a lot of power in the Chicago lineup, and Lopez doesn't miss a lot of bats, which is something that's really important to me when looking to most of these White Sox hitters.
I'm with you. Okay, so you want to move on, or you want to spend any more time on the bats here?
One more thing to point out with Ronaldo Lopez, his fastball velocity is also down 2 miles an hour from last season. So that's not great, and it is another reason probably why he's been awful this year.
Yeah. There's strikeouts, but he's also prone to giving up power here. He's allowed 3 home runs in each of his last 2 starts.
Yeah.
Not to say that continues, but it's also very possible at guaranteed rate fields.
So I just don't want to give the impression that I'm in love with Ronaldo Lopez. It's more that I think there's a ton of upside in the Kansas City lineup, and in some starts, Lopez has good stuff.
You're not in love with Ronaldo Lopez. You just hate him less than you did earlier in the day.
Yeah, very, very good point.
Okay.
I like Gibson less than I did earlier in the day, and I hate Lopez less than I did earlier in the day.
There you go. Yep. Let's talk about the San Diego Padres and Colorado Rockies. John Gray, Nick Margevicius. I like John Gray. I always like John Gray. I believe he was the recipient of a lot of bad fortune last year and still has really great stuff with a super high ceiling. And I think the price point is perfectly fine. So that's where I'm at on John Gray. By the way, on Yahoo, he's definitely a lot cheaper than a lot of these other guys. Pretty much the same price as Quintana and Mike Minor. So you can do the math there. What's your take on the pitching matchup here?
Agreed. Really nice price on Yahoo. And I like Gray too. He's another reason why, especially in tournaments, I don't think you have to pay up for pitching because, do I think he's as good as Strasburg or Glass now? Probably not. But he's also a lot cheaper and he's not in a bad spot against the Pirates lineup that's running out six righties plus a pitcher. Outside of Coors Field, I don't really have any reasons not to like John Gray here.
Margevicius, thoughts on him and right-handed bats maybe for Colorado?
Arenado and Story I like quite a bit, especially Arenado. I kind of had to like double and triple check his numbers when I looked at them for the deep dive article today because I was looking at his numbers against lefties outside of Coors, and it's still like a 180 WRC plus with like a 339 ISO or something over the last 2+ seasons. Story is not. He's more exaggerated. He's like a 214 ISO. Like 121 WRC plus. He's 369 WOBA. So he's still good, but Arenado's just been like phenomenal regardless of where he hits. And they are priced down a bit. The fact that the Rockies have a 3.8 implied run total means that people will probably stay away from them. So I like both of them as one-offs, but I'm not really interested in the Rockies as a stack. I still don't buy into I don't remember Margevicius.
Margevicius, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But the Padres bullpen's good. He's been good enough so far. It's a huge park downgrade, obviously, for Colorado. It's a 13-game slate, so I'm not really on Colorado stacks, but I do like Arenado and Story one-offs.
That's where I stand on this one as well. I don't think you need to stack a team that just doesn't really. They're not a great team to stack anyway. At least not right now with the way the lineup is configured. But Arenado and Story are always going to give us a ton of upside, regardless of the venue. And Margevicius, I mean, the guy pitched it in high A before even, that's the last trip he made before coming to the majors. I don't necessarily expect to see him continue to pitch at a super high level, but who knows? Maybe I'll be wrong. We'll see. Let's go ahead and talk about any other bats here that you have before we move on to our final three games. I'm assuming you don't have much from San Diego, or do you?
No, I mean, Franmil Reyes is someone who's just been hitting the hell out of the ball, and it hasn't really been in his results yet, but I don't really need to target John Gray here.
All right. Let's talk Houston and Oakland. We've got Marco Estrada. We have Colin McHugh. I really like Colin McHugh. I just don't know how much I like him in this spot. I think the price tag's pretty fair. He's got great stuff and a super high ceiling given his strikeout stuff. Is it a great spot against Oakland? I can't say I love it. And then Marco Estrada should benefit from pitching in Oakland, opposed to these hitter friendly parks. But I'm looking at both spots and not. I mean, well, you know what? Where do you stand on McHugh? And then we can talk about Estrada and Houston bats.
I like him a little bit more than I like Gray. I don't mind this matchup because there should be six righties in the lineup for Oakland, and they are all guys for the most part that strike out. It's dangerous as far as the amount of power they have, but so far this season, McHugh has like a 2.75 xFIP. He struck out 33% of hitters. He has a massive swinging strike percentage on the slider, which has led to a particularly high swinging strike percentage from right-handed hitters, 21.6% swinging strike percentage against righties so far this season, with a 33.3% swinging strike percentage on the slider, which he's thrown 47.5% of the time. So I do like Colin McHugh a lot here. I would say he's my favorite. Like I like the entire range of McHugh, Bieber, Quintana, Gray. I feel like I'm forgetting one other guy, but I like that entire range. But I would say that McHugh is probably my favorite.
Okay, so you really don't mind this matchup with Oakland?
No, not at all.
All right. Hitters in this one?
Houston. I mean, it is a ballpark downgrade as far as home runs go, ballpark upgrade for Estrada. But again, you just get so many good hitters in this lineup. I expect that they go overlooked a little bit on this slate, and they're reasonably priced. I mean, we're still talking about George Springer in the mid 4Ks, Bregman less than $5,000 on DraftKings. They're not my favorite. They're similar to like Washington for me.
All right, that makes sense. I'm with you. I really do think Marco Estrada is shielded from a lot of his issues when he's at this park. So we'll see. Anything else here?
No.
All right, 2 to go. LA Dodgers and Cincinnati. Tyler Mahle, Kenta Maeda. I really like Dodger bats against Tyler Mahle. I believe that he still has not fixed his issues against left-handed hitters, and there are so many good left-handed hitters in this lineup that it just makes him that much more appealing to me. I guess the only question is whether or not Bellinger will be in the lineup, but just a ton of talented lefties, and once again, I like them. You can hit this game as a whole if you want to start with Maeda, start with the Dodgers. I don't imagine you're playing Tyler Mahle, is what I'm saying.
No, I mean his home run issues get better outside of Great American as you would expect,
Mhm.
but still last season allowed 1.5 homers per nine to lefties outside of Great American, 2.56 total to lefties, and you just have a ton of left-handed power here, like you said. Bellinger, if he's in the lineup, great, but if he's out, then that just should mean Alex Verdugo is in the lineup, which gives you a cheap left-handed hitter or a cheaper left-handed hitter. You should either way, you should have at least 4 lefties in the top 6 here for the Dodgers, and the 2 righties would be Justin Turner and AJ Pollock. So it's not like you're getting 2 dead spots in this order. I think it's a really high upside spot. Hopefully it being the last game on the slate and probably having the lineup released really late because of Bellinger keeps ownership down. But I think it's one of the higher upside spots.
So do I. And another thing too is a few of these guys you're just going to get at a discount. Like I still think Seager is too cheap. I don't care if he hasn't, been having an electric start to the season. I still like that price point. Verdugo's probably going to be in the lineup. He's been good enough. He has enough power. I mean, 3 home runs, 2 doubles, and a triple across 33 at bats. Not bad. Jock Peterson, he's going to cost you, but as you can see, there's enough guys here that you can do a million different things. Any thoughts on Maeda or Cincinnati?
If I have to pick one out of the two, I would pick Maeda just because you do have a majority right-handed lineup. I think Maeda is good, but I just don't get to as much of him as I do guys like McHugh and Gray and Bieber and Quintana.
All right. Well, let's close it out then. By the way, coming up next is Live Before Lock, and that will be Emac and Chris Spags taking you up till 7:05 p.m. Eastern time. That's when we lock tonight. Let's close it out, Adam. Seattle and Cleveland. We've got ourselves Shane Bieber and Mike Leake on the bump. I Josh didn't like this. I said earlier today I wouldn't have been surprised if Leake goes like 7 one-run innings with 6 or 5 strikeouts. But he's Mike Leake, so what are you gonna do? I just, again, wouldn't be surprised against a really bad Cleveland lineup. Right now, implied total for Cleveland is at 4.1, and for the Seattle Mariners, 3.9 against Bieber. I'm not really getting to Bieber here. Is this a spot you like?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Tell us why.
Especially his DraftKings price at 8,600. I'm getting there. You have 6 righties in the lineup for Seattle, which I think is a big deal for Bieber. Gives up less power to them. We know he doesn't really walk guys, and there are some strikeouts here. Not a ton, but Haniger, Encarnacion both at 22% last year. Santana almost at 30%. Tim Beckham's a 25% guy. Healy's above 20%. Murphy strikes out a ton. There's a lot of strikeouts, and then there's D Gordon and Malik Smith who don't really have power from the left side, which leaves Jay Bruce as someone who I actually like as a one-off in tournaments. I expect he'll have virtually no ownership, but I think he's a really good tournament one-off. But outside of that, it's a lineup that I like for Bieber, so I'm actually getting to a lot of Bieber. I have him in cash right now as my SP1.
All right, interesting. Yeah, I don't have as much interest in him. I get the price point though. I don't have any issues with that. Thoughts on Mike Leake and Cleveland hitters?
I'm with you. I wouldn't be surprised if Leake has a good game. I hate rostering the guy. I don't think I'll get a lot tonight, but I'm not really on Cleveland bats either, with the exception of Jose Ramirez, who is just too cheap for what we know he is as a hitter. He's been bad for a couple of weeks, but Leake doesn't miss bats. He doesn't walk guys either, so we should have Ramirez putting the ball in play. He's really, really inexpensive, really across the board, and he has enough of a track record where I'm going to just keep playing him at a cheap price tag.
All right. Yeah, and finally paid it off yesterday. Finally. You said Jose Ramirez, right?
Yep.
Yeah. With that home run, 2 stolen bases too. It's nice to know. I mean, the good thing about Ramirez, even though he's been hitting so poorly, he still has 5 stolen bases on the season, so that's encouraging.
Yep.
Any other bats from this one?
No, it's pretty much Ramirez, Bruce, and Bieber.
All right. Before we head out, well, I mentioned if you like the show, say it each and every night, and you want to see more of it, and you want to support the channel, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video. It helps us out a lot, and we really appreciate it. Also, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always know when we're going to be dropping new content. Top stacks before we close it out. Adam, go ahead.
Dodgers, Tampa, Philly, Mets, and Texas.
All right. Yeah, Dodgers, Texas. It's hard to say I love an Angel stack. I mean, Trout, obviously, but really like Tampa as well. All right, that'll do it for us. Stick around on the Awesemo_com YouTube channel, live before lock with Spags and EMAC coming up next, taking you up to lock. And remember, FanDuel lock, 6:35 p.m. Eastern time. Both DraftKings and Yahoo on their main slate will be kicking off at or starting at 7:05 p.m. Eastern normal time. So keep that in mind as you're throwing entries in. Good luck tonight. Adam and I will see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive.